Hello everyone, you have come to Tata Comic Preview channel. Let read together. Have fun. Lu Zhou sighed when he saw the eager expression on Li Yunsheng's face. Then, he said, I'll look at the ancient books you mentioned earlier when I have the time. Li Yunsheng nodded. Lu Zhou continued to say, what you mentioned about the birth charts has some inaccuracies. For example, the number of birth charts a cultivator can activate is at most around 12 isn't accurate. Really? Li Yunsheng exclaimed in surprise. He was like a child who was fascinated by listening to mythical and legendary stories. He was always excited about obtaining new knowledge. I'm not certain exactly how many birth charts one can activate, but I'm certain it's more than 12, Lu Zhou said as he stroked his beard. The birth palace should refer to the center of the lotus, and birth charts are in the birth palace. The positions of the birth charts also most likely have rules of their own. Each birth chart will grant a cultivator with a different ability. Lu Zhou continued to say, for example, defensive birth charts will greatly boost one's defenses, and offensive birth charts will greatly boost one's offenses. All birth charts are likely this way. Do you understand? In the past, Li Yunsheng could only read books to gain knowledge. Moreover, he had to rely on himself, fumbling to understand the knowledge he obtained. Now that he had the guidance of a great master, he, naturally, did not doubt Lu Zhou's words. He nodded solemnly and said, I understand. Grand Disciple still has one more question to ask. Speak. Although Lu Zhou possessed 1,000 years of experience from Ji Tiando's memories, it was inevitable that there were things he did not know. He really did not know much about birth charts. What he knew now was based on his experience and some of Li Yunsheng's knowledge. Grandmaster, are you capable of defeating Yu Chenshu? Li Yunsheng asked curiously as he looked at Lu Zhou with wide and bright eyes. This reminded Lu Zhou of the inexperienced little Yuan in the past. However, as time passed, she was no longer the little girl she used to be. However, the emperor was still innocent and childlike. Lu Zhou answered honestly, I've already killed him. Li Yunsheng was shocked. Then, an expression of disbelief appeared on his face as he thought to himself, I understand if you care about your reputation and pride, and it's understandable if you want to brag occasionally. You don't believe me? Li Yunsheng shook his head and hurriedly said, No, I believe you. The duo continued chatting harmoniously when Nie Qingjian's voice rang from outside the room. Senior Lu, I found some ancient books about birth charts. Come in. After entering the room, Nie Qingjian placed a few ancient books in front of Lu Zhou before he respectfully said, I asked my disciple to search through the library, and these are the only books they found. It was not easy to find them. Very good. Lu Zhou nodded in satisfaction. Li Yunsheng glanced at the ancient books a few times before he said, Grandmaster, I've said this earlier. Half of the information about birth charts is nonsense. Like you said, even the number of birth charts one can activate is inaccurate. Perhaps, there are only one or two things that are accurate. Are you done? Lu Zhou stared at Li Yunsheng expressionlessly. Lu Zhou stared at Li Yunsheng without blinking. Li Yunsheng smiled sheepishly with an awkward expression on his face. He just realized he had been showing off in front of an expert. Finally, Lu Zhou said, If there's nothing else, you may both leave. Yes. Nie Qingyun and Li Yunsheng left the room together. Meanwhile, Lu Zhou looked at the stack of ancient books in front of him. He, naturally, wanted to read these books. One could not be careless in regard to cultivation. Moreover, Li Yunsheng was still young, there might be some mistakes even if he was well read. In the end, Lu Zhou spent an hour reading 2 of the ancient books. Compared to what he knew and what Li Yunsheng had told him, the information about birth chart in the books seemed more comprehensive. Lu Zhou muttered to himself, the orders of birth charts aren't fixed. It's best to choose the position, or the birth disk, based on the life heart's attributes. Birth charts are divided into 3 categories, heaven, earth, and human. One can embed a life heart into the star aligns the pen and sword position. For example, it's best to embed a life heart with offensive attributes in the position of the 7 killing techniques in the birth palace. The books contained 6 positions, or birth discs, in the birth palace, and the types of life hearts that were suitable to be embedded into these 6 positions. Indeed, the information was very limited. Zhou brought the piece of cloth that was given to him by Lu Li and found the 6 birth discs mentioned in the books were indeed on the piece of cloth. Zhou wondered out loud, does this mean the 36 points in this pattern represent the complete positions in the birth palace? In any case, Zhou confirmed that the life heart of a birth chart beast was also called the birth chart heart. He also confirmed that the birth chart hearts were to be embedded into the birth discs in the birth palace. If it was embedded in an unsuitable birth disc, one would not be able to obtain the life heart's attributes. Zhou put the books down and studied the birth chart map in front of him. Then, he flipped his hand. Buzz. The 100 Tribulations Insight avatar appeared in front of Zhou. He increased the size of the avatar as much as he could. Then, he moved the avatar until the lotus was in front of him. He looked at the center of the lotus that was like a round table surrounded by 10 golden leaves. At this moment, the center of the lotus, or the lotus seat, was completely empty. Zhou frowned as a thought suddenly appeared in his mind. If the birth palace and the birth discs were in the lotus seat, what would Yu Shangrong do in the future? Zhou felt as though he had harmed his own disciple. Even if Yu Shangrong made his own decision to sever his lotus and had nothing to do with Zhou, what about Zhu Honggong, Zhao Yu, Duanmu Sheng, and the 4 elders? It was his idea that led them to sever their lotuses. There were probably no cultivators who severed their lotuses in other places except for the Golden Lotus domain. Zhou shook his head and cast away the unpleasant thoughts in his mind. His eyes fell on the lotus seat again. After making sure his avatar was facing forward and the birth palace was in place, Zhou looked at the birth chart map and compared it to the lotus seat. He muttered to himself, the star aligns, the pen and sword is here. Then, he brought the Yong's life heart out. He inhaled deeply before he pushed the life heart onto the lotus seat. It fell on the lotus seat like a magical object floating in a sea of golden liquid. The instant the life heart touched the lotus seat, a clearly defined polygonal pattern appeared on the surface of the lotus seat. A humming sound rang in the air as the lotus seat began to spin. At the same time, wisps of energy surged out of the life heart and surged into the lotus seat. The lotus seat was absorbing the lifespan from the Yong's life heart, looking like a vortex that was pulling all the vitality energy into it. Zhou felt his heart stir as he watched this scene with unblinking eyes. Is this the activation of a birth chart? It was not as difficult as Zhou had imagined. It was true that the process of activating a birth chart was not complex. The difficult part was finding a birth chart beast, defeating it, and obtaining its life heart. The lotus seat continued to spin at an increasing speed. At this moment, the vortex emitted a golden light as it continued to absorb the lifespan from the life heart. Soon enough, the life heart began to shrink. It was as though one was watching a cube of ice melting. On the other hand, there was no change to the pattern that appeared earlier. 1,500 years of life. If I use the reversal cards to provide it with years of life instead, will I be able to save the life heart? In any case, this was just an idea for now. Zhou had no plan of trying it now. At this moment, he did not have enough reversal cards, after all. He could only use the life heart. After an unknown amount of time had passed. At this moment, the life heart had completely disappeared, melting into the golden lotus seat. The lotus seat had stopped spinning as well. Zhou carefully studied the lotus seat. The place where the life heart was placed earlier seemed to have been filled up. Meanwhile, the polygon pattern on the lotus seat would light up from time to time. This reminded him of Lu Li's birth chart. The only difference was Zhou's birth chart was golden. So I've successfully activated my golden birth chart? Zhou looked at the defined pattern on the lotus seat. The entire process of activating his first birth chart was exceptionally smooth. While Zhou was still mulling over the matter, the birth disc on the lotus seat suddenly grew bigger. The familiar sound of resonance between energies rang in the air, and Zhou's avatar began to increase in size. Upon seeing this, Zhou hurriedly controlled his vitality energy and his avatar. However, the speed at which his avatar was growing was incredibly quick. In just a moment, it broke the room open. Boom. The avatar grew to 200 feet and showed no sign of stopping. 210 feet. 220 feet. The thunderous commotion naturally attracted the Cloud Mountain disciples. At this time, Nie Qingyun was accompanying Li Yunzheng on the cloud platform, chatting and enjoying the scenery when they heard the commotion as well. Both of them instinctively turned to look in the direction of the commotion. Senior Lu's avatar. Boom. The avatar and lotus seat had completely demolished the room. Lu Zhou looked at the lotus seat in front of him with a frown. Logically, as long as he controlled it with his energy, the avatar would be able to pass through the building without causing any damage. Why did it suddenly expand and go out of control? What went wrong? 230 feet. The height of the avatar continued to increase. Lu Zhou knew this was the sign of the avatar becoming stronger. However, it should not be out of his control. He looked at the lotus seed again. At this moment, it was the size of a small pond. Meanwhile, Li Yunzheng, who saw this scene, could not help but say emotionally, "Grandmaster is really good to me. He actually personally did a live demonstration of the activation of a birth chart for me and showed me his birth chart." Nie Qingyun asked in surprise, "The birth chart?" "Look. In the middle of the lotus seat, there's a distinct pattern that flashes with light every once in a while. That's his birth chart." Li Yunzheng was filled with awe. He had read about many things, but he had never had a chance to witness the things he read about. How could he not be filled with awe and excitement when he was able to witness something he had only read about? "Men," Nie Qingyun called out. 2 disciples appeared immediately. "Pass down my order. The Cloud Mountain disciples are prohibited from approaching the 3rd peak in order not to disturb Senior Lu's cultivation. Apart from that, clean up the main hall." "Understood." With this order in place, the curious Cloud Mountain disciples could only stay away from Lu Zhou's place. Meanwhile, Lu Zhou was focused on watching the changes of his lotus seat that he did not pay any attention to the Cloud Mountain disciples at all. 240 feet. At this moment, the star aligns the pen and sword shot out a beam of light straight up to the sky. This reminded him of the scene in the Skywheel Rift Valley when the heavenly fire sex Feng Zai activated the power from the Yang's life heart. Lu Zhou glanced at the confinement seal in the distance and quickly put it away before he flew up to his avatar. The lotus seat is not absorbing vitality energy now? Lu Zhou was pondering on this when Conk appeared and pointed at the beam of light as she said, "Master, stop it. Make it stop." Despite her words, she was clapping as though she was watching a firework display. "Stop it?" Lu Zhou flew to the top of the beam of light and pressed it down with his palm. He was shocked by the powerful vitality from the beam of light. Fortunately, the beam of light did not attack him. It only felt like it was trying to stop him. Soon after, he successfully stopped the beam of light, causing the vitality energy to surge back into the lotus seat. With this, the avatar finally stopped growing when it reached 250 feet. Meanwhile, the polygonal pattern on the lotus seat flashed in a frenzy for a moment before it returned to normal. At this moment, Lu Zhou could sense the avatar was not under his control again. He quickly withdrew his avatar. After he landed on the ground, he placed his hands on his back and walked to Conk before he asked, "Conk, where's your senior sister?" Conk replied, "Senior sister is still sleeping. I heard a big commotion, so I came to have a look." Lu Zhou thought to himself that the little girl was too lazy. After a while, he asked Conk, perplexed, "You know about birth charts?" Conk seemed to be in a daze as she replied, "Yes, I think I've seen it before." If this was true, Conk's background had just gotten more complicated. In the Red Lotus domain, there was no one who managed to successfully activate their birth charts in the past 2,000 years. Where or when could Conk have seen it? However, Lu Zhou only said, "You may leave now and continue with your cultivation." "Yes." Lu Zhou turned around and surveyed the room and the side hall. Unfortunately, it was completely destroyed. With this, he could only make his way to the main hall. Fortunately, the main hall had already been repaired. When he arrived at the main hall, he saw a few disciples tidying the main hall. The disciples bowed one after another before one of them said, "The sect master said Senior Lu should rest in the main hall. You may leave." Understood. The Cloud Mountain disciples left the main hall immediately. As soon as Zhou entered the main hall, he manifested his avatar. Apart from the increase in height, the lotus seat had expanded as well. This could be seen even though it was in its miniature size now. Zhou increased its size. On the lotus seat, in the birth palace, the pattern of the birth chart could be clearly seen. It seemed like as long as even the smallest thought of controlling it appeared in his mind, the pattern would flash with light. Apart from that, the avatar seemed more solid as well. If previously it was only golden in color, currently, it looked like it was made of pure gold. So activating one birth chart increased its height by 50 feet. Luli has activated 5 birth charts, so his avatar should be about 450 feet tall. However, when he recalled Luli's Thousand Realms whirling avatar, it seemed like it was much taller than if he had just activated 5 birth charts. Naturally, this was just his speculation. There was a possibility that one's avatar would gain additional height as well after forming the Thousand Realms whirling avatar for the first time. After a moment, Zhou opened the system panel and looked at the Thousand Realms whirling avatar he had purchased. The system notification he received at this moment was different from the one he received the night before. Ding! Would you like to use the Thousand Realms whirling avatar? Previously, the system had notified him that he had to activate a birth chart first before he could use the avatar. He had finally fulfilled the requirement. Zhou could not help but sigh emotionally. His speed was too incredible. It had not been that long since he had reached the 10-leaf stage after all. Everyone had assumed that he had been a 10-leaf elite for a long time and had also activated his birth chart. Although his speed was incredible, it was really difficult to accumulate 500,000 merit points. Yu Chenshu alone had given him a headache, and killing Yu Chenshu did not give him nearly enough merit points. Moreover, he did not expect the true Kunlun sect and the Void sect would stay out of the fight. If Yu Chenshu did as he had expected and did not bring anyone with him, it would have been impossible for him to accumulate 500,000 merit points. Fortunately, it was Luli who appeared. After all, if it was another Thousand Realms whirling cultivator, he or she would probably be ruthless. At that time, Zhou would have no choice but to use his merit points to buy a deadly strike card. Moreover, a Thousand Realms whirling cultivator definitely had many life-saving techniques. This meant that he would probably have to purchase more than one deadly strike cards or other item cards. Zhou looked at the main hall thoughtfully for a moment. The Thousand Realms whirling avatar won't destroy the main hall, right? He shook his head. It can't be helped. This is an important matter. Use it. The Thousand Realms whirling vanished from the system panel and spots of starlight like fireflies appeared around his avatar. Primal chi began to surge as the sky changed color and the clouds were stirred by the violent wind. The Cloud Mountain disciples did not think much of the change in the weather and dismissed it as bad weather. Meanwhile, Nye Qingyun and Li Yunzheng looked at the sky suspiciously. Li Yunzheng asked curiously, "What kind of weather is this?" Nye Qingyun only said, "Your Majesty, it's time for you to return and rest." "No, Sect Master Nye, look." Li Yunzheng saw the large amount of primal chi above the main hall in the peak that looked like dark clouds. Soon after, the primal chi shot down into the main hall. This? Nye Qingyun frowned. Is Senior Lu uncomfortable living on Cloud Mountain? Is that why he's destroying the courtyards here? Lu Yunjing suggested, "Why don't we give my courtyard to Grandmaster?" Is this appropriate? There's nothing appropriate or inappropriate about it. Although I'm the ruler of the country, it's just an empty title. Let's just give my place to Grandmaster. Look, the main hall is about to be destroyed again. Let me tell you, Grandmaster's temper isn't as good as you think it is. Li Yunzheng said. Your Majesty is magnanimous and admirable, Nye Qingyun said. Then, he shuddered as the scene of Lu Zhou beating up Yixin appeared in his mind unbidden. Bad temper felt like an understatement. Lu Zhou had slapped someone to death just because of a single word of disagreement. Indeed, one should not provoke birth chart masters.